Memorization is the enemy of learning. You do not want your students memorizing anything. Instead, you want them learning concepts. You want to give them the tools that they can use to transform these abstract thoughts into sounds that come out of their mouth the way that English does it. That's what you want to focus on. And in this video, I'm going to give you 2 quick tips on how to do exactly that. So why should you listen to me? Well, for one, I love teaching. Number 2, I hate wasting time. And number 3, I don't get paid for this. I do this for fun. It's a passion for me. The thing that's in it for me, my reward, is seeing my students realize something new. They learn something new. They get that, oh, that's how you do it. Like, I love that more than anything in this world. And I do all that I can to try to bring those moments to my students. Okay, so the first tip I have for you is to start with concepts that they already have a strong base in. And coming from a Latin language, they already have a strong base in the Latin half of English. For example, words like animal, capital, transportation, words like that. You don't have to teach them sentences or anything. You just start with the basics, such as transportation. The word is the same in Spanish, same with animal or capital. Those words are the exact same in Spanish. You just have to get them pronouncing it in the English way. That way, you just gave them the first small baby step in taking a concept, an abstract concept in their head of an animal, and getting them to produce the English sound of animal versus the Spanish sound of animal. And so it's the exact same thing, you're just building their confidence. And that's what we start off with in the first lesson. I want you to check out this example from one of my students, Carolina, where in the very first lesson, I just throw some Latin words at her, and I give her very little clues on how to pronounce it in English, and she figures it out from there.
Active.
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 Muy sencillo. Active. Activamente.
Actively.
Actively. Actividad.
Activity.
Ah, ya, muy bien. Agresivo.
Aggressive. Aggressive.
Aggressive.
Aggressive.
Allí, aggressive
Aggressive.
suena con S. Y es porque hay 2 S en la ortografía.
Como Z. Aggressive. Con S. Aggressive.
Aggressive. Pero, por ejemplo, positivo era ¿qué?
Positive.
Positive. Tienes
Positive.
porque positive solo tiene una S. Positive.
Positive.
Es lo mismo como is. He is, is con Z. Pasivo.
Passive.
Passive. So here I'm just peppering her with very basic Latin words in English and seeing how she responds. And you can see that she gets every single one of them right very easily. No fuss. I just give her the basic rules of how to pronounce the word in English, and then she gets it just like that. And these are the small wins that really build on themselves and that really count. Because later on in the course, we're going to have some much more difficult English sentence structures that she doesn't have in Spanish, and she's going to need this confidence of, okay, there's this concept I have, how do I form the sounds? You know, that movement from concept to sound is going to be very difficult to do if you're going from 0 to 60 all at once. So having these small wins really, really count. Okay, so the second tip I have for you is to use just enough Spanish grammar to cue her mind in the situation or the abstract thought that she's trying to communicate in English. Okay, but no more grammar than that. Because what you don't want to fall into is the trap of Spanish says the sentence this way, and you got to memorize that English says that same structure this way. You want to avoid that at all costs. Instead, what you want to do is open a need for her or him to think, oh, I'm in this situation, I have this thought in my head, how do I express it with English? I'm not going to compare it with Spanish, I'm just going to use the English tools I have to express it. So you use just enough Spanish grammar to cue the situation that they need to translate or communicate it. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Entonces, hay es un verbo y viene de haber en español. Pero hay como verbo en inglés no existe. Entonces, el concepto de existir algo lo expresamos con la combinación de there is.
There is.
Ujú. Si hablamos de una cosa es there is un teléfono.
There is a phone.
There is a phone. Si hablamos de más de una cosa,
There are.
there are. Muy bien. ¿Por qué es there are?
For they are, we are.
Ujú. Exacto. Muy bien. There are two phones. ¿Cierto? Okay. Hay un problema.
There is a problem.
Sí. Okay, so here I cued her mind to the situation of needing to express the abstract thought that something exists or something is here in this spot right here. Now, in Spanish, she already knows how to communicate that. She knows the words to use. Hay un problema. There is a problem. She already knows the word to use. But in English, it's slightly different. And what I do not want to do is fall into the trap of, okay, well, if in Spanish, I do not want to fall into the trap of teaching her direct translations of Spanish to English. No, I want to cue her mind to a problem that needs to be communicated. Something needs to be communicated. How do we do that in English? There's no Spanish involved here. All I do is I cue her mind to the idea that something is there. How do we communicate that in English? And you can see that after I taught her the very basic, there is, she immediately went back to her previous understanding of is and are, the two forms of to be, and she thought, oh, well, if there is means if there's only one thing there, well, then there are must be there's two things, right? There's two things. And so you can see how she picked that up from previous concepts. And all I had to do was cue her mind to the situation of, oh, there is something, or there are some things, and I need to express that.
Y si yo quiero decir, hay unos problemas.
Entonces, unos es otro concepto que no sabes todavía.
Entonces, they are problems.
Bien, la pronunciación de there.
There are problems.
There are problems. Muy bien. Unos se dice some.
Some,
Ajá.
como something.
Sí, some. Something es alguna cosa, entonces unos es some. Algunas some también. Entonces, hay unos problemas.
There are some problems.
Listo. There are some problems. Muy bien. Okay, so right after teaching her there is and there are, she started playing with this tool. She's like, oh, I have this new tool. I can take the thought of there being something and I can say there is and there are. And then she starts thinking, well, how do I say this thing? How do I communicate the idea of there being some things or some people? The word some. And she didn't know that word, at least not outright, not in and of itself. But you can see that she was playing with the tool that she learned, and this is how she's learning, is she's experimenting with it. And well, what if I do this? How does it work then? And what if I do that? How does it work then? And so what I did was she came up with some. How do I say some? And I said, okay, do you remember the word something? She's like, oh yeah, algunas cosas. Okay, yeah. And it kind of builds on there. The more you do this, cueing her mind to a situation and then teaching her how to say it in English, the more she can use those tools in later lessons of you teaching her other tools. So everything builds on itself. And this is the exponential tool that you can use as a teacher to get them to learn English a whole lot faster than memorizing. Memorizing is the linear version of learning a new language. You learn word by word by word and you build up. But teaching them concepts is the exponential version. You start off very slow, but it ramps up and it ramps up and it ramps up, and eventually they know the language. And even if they come across a new word they've never seen before, like the verb to construct or whatever, they can figure out, without even reading the dictionary, all the different past tense, future tenses, continuous tenses, all the tenses of that word without ever having to Google it, right? So it's all about structure. That's how you 10x your speed. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope this was helpful to you. I'm all about helping teachers learn to teach faster. And if you want to see more deep dive kind of content into the psychology of learning, the psychology of students, the actual structure of language, Please leave a comment below and tell me what you would like to see or what you would not like to see, and I will try to help you out.